I'm Eleni Jarkas and welcome to this special edition of Connecting Africa. On this series, we talk trade and highlight African excellence. And every now and then, we bring you those stories and interviews from some pretty spectacular locations. I'm in Zanzibar, an archipelago that's around 15 miles from Tanzania, a popular tourist destination and also a trading base for thousands of years. And spices have always been at the heart of what makes this place tick. But now, new business leaders are looking at other ways to develop this incredible island economy.
In terms of natural beauty, Zanzibar has a lot going for it. But when it comes to developing businesses, it can be a more challenging environment. When you take a stroll through the streets, the smell of spices reminds you why these islands first became such an important location for traders. Now, there's a new natural homegrown resource that is attracting the attention of local entrepreneurs. Andrew Anthony and Claudia Shad are the co-founders of Mwani Zanzibar, which they believe is the first and largest producer of seaweed skincare products on the islands.
Zanzibar is known for incredible spices and its exports. It's known for tourism. Should it also be known for its seaweed? As you say, it's one of the biggest exports out of the country.
Yes, it is the largest export out of the country. However, there is no product or local processing from it. So we're the first company to produce skincare out of it. And we produce various different products from it, and the impact is with the women. So the idea is to impact the women seaweed farmers, but also the raw material obtained from other farmers around the island.
So most of it was actually being exported raw, the seaweed?
Yes, whereby all the value is created outside of Zanzibar. And what we wanted to do is change that narrative. We wanted the women to create all the value here and reap the benefits of that. And what also happens by creating skincare on the island, we also need suppliers. And so we have a whole supply chain of about 180 people, which offer us fantastic ingredients and then also get paid good amounts of money to provide us with those ingredients.
The factory where the products are created is filled with enticing odors.
Take me through these little soaps, because these are darker than the other ones, yeah?
Yes, so these are actually also turmeric soaps, and the other ones are mixed with cinnamon. Yes. And of course here we've got a whole range of other types of soaps that are being produced. These are lemongrass with 4 different types of seaweed in them. So these are very specific and very beautiful soaps.
So when you're selling, to people, do they understand the benefits? Like, how are you relaying that information so that people understand?
Word of mouth.
Word of mouth.
Do you know what happens is once they try, they will always come back for more. And that's the power of the product.
But it's when you take a walk to the ocean to watch the seaweed being harvested that you really appreciate the beautiful environment behind this business.
What makes it different?
It's the methodology, the way that the tide comes out and the way that the women lay out their farms is very specific to here. More and more it's becoming sort of an iconic image of Zanzibar, watching these women out in the ocean farming. It's absolutely beautiful.
There's so many beautiful things to experience in Zanzibar, but perhaps this commodity, this resource, is one of the most spectacular. I'm on a seaweed farm and we're watching harvesting taking place right now. The question is, how do they increase the value chains surrounding this commodity?
Making money from products found on the island and creating sustainable businesses are vital if Zanzibar is to expand away from its reliance on tourism. The ocean and the plants that grow in it might just help provide a push in the right direction. Mwani is an ever-evolving company. It has international aspirations.
The logistics side of things on the African front could be rectified with the Continental Free Trade Area. Do you believe in that? Are you watching that closely?
We are.
Does that excite you?
Yes, we're looking at the East African community and all of these different programs that are coming up. And hopefully also with the South African agreements, yes.
What we do find in Africa quite often is that people, when they do have the buying power, they often look towards other brands from other countries rather than looking at their own African brands. I think it's sort of symptomatic of what we just discussed before, that they seem to look up to those brands more. And we think that that will change, and we already do see a change in just the last few years, but that is a process. We love the African market. The issues that we're still having in the African market is the logistics. The supply chain is really quite complicated. And then also when it comes to marketing, also you have to work with each country very specifically, which is also in a sense something that we'll have to do in Europe as well. But absolutely, we are also interested in the African market.
Welcome back to Zanzibar. This is a dynamic island that wants to be known as more than just a home for holiday makers. It wants to be seen as a place to come and do business, making Africa a go-to destination for technology as well as trade. Now, business was on the minds of many of the delegates that attended the Africa Rising conference that took place in Ghana earlier this year, and we spoke to 3 entrepreneurs at the event.
These conferences make us see the need and importance to lift Africa up and take Africa to the places never thought of being.
The energy, the enterprise, the inventiveness, ingenuity is beginning to lift this continent.
I want Africa to rise for all Africans, and that's why every time we're doing something, it is important for us to have custody and control and ownership, because if not, Africa will rise and our people will still be down, and that would be a shame. So if I leave Lagos to fly to Abuja, it's probably going to take me 50 minutes or 55 minutes. So we should be able to do, apart from even just arguing about who has the best jollof rice, we should be doing more stuff together, like all of the things that bind us, music, food, and all of the other traditions that we share in common.
The Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement, I think it's the best thing that could ever happen to Africa, because it's creating that borderless economies that we need.
I think it's an amazing idea. I think, as with many things, I don't know that it's really real yet. So I think that we're yet to see really the full benefits of it. But I do think that networking the continent, right? Creating trade, creating relationships, creating commercial relationships with the continent is really important. So our first port of call is to begin to move out into the West African sub-region, and then across the rest of the continent. And then we're actually also really interested in markets that have a large populations of Africans in the diaspora. So South America, places like that. So Africa first, and then where the other Black people are after that.
Where do we want to be? We want to follow the remittances. What we do is we follow the immigrant. So wherever there's a diaspora, we want to do business. We leverage remittances by making sure that the last mile will receive their remittances directly into their mobile wallets. Africa Rising actually has a very deep-seated meaning to myself. Obviously, I was an immigrant myself at some point, but when you come back home and when you leave home again and then you come back again, then you realize that Africa desperately needs to rise, because Africa has it all. And it's not about extractive minerals. It's not about gold. It's not about uranium. It's about the talent. It's about reimagining all the things we have and how we can leverage technology to rebuild it.
The story of Africa has been written not by us for such a long time. There's this saying that until the lion learns to write, the story of the hunt will always glorify the hunter, right? So I think this is the Africa Rising for me. It's like, talks about a renaissance of the rebirth of the continent, where we can actually hold our destiny into our hands.
So when I think about Africa Rising, what I think about is the large population of young people and how dynamic they are, how entrepreneurial they are, how they have taken over globally. I own an agency and I work with a lot of young people, and I see their optimism and I see their drive and their passion, and I think to myself, if they are the people who are going to be running the world, then I'm not worried.
My final words is to the youth in Africa. Let's reimagine, let's rethink. It's to our leadership. We should allow for ideation. Ideation is a key thing for change.
My final words to my African brothers and sisters that may be watching at this moment is that Africa belongs to us. This is the only continent that we'll ever own. This is the only place where we can sit down, put our feet on the ground and know that the ancestors are happy with us and nobody can tell us anything. So we need to treat this continent like it does matter, because it really does matter. And if we do that, I can assure you the future for Africa is very bright.
A bright future built on youth. That, I think, is something we can all agree is a good thing. Hello, I'm Eleni Jokas, and this is Connecting Africa. This month, I'm in Zanzibar, a group of islands in the Indian Ocean, attracting visitors from all around the world, lured in by its natural beauty and its rich history. Now, of late, it's trying to reinvent itself as a tech hub. But that's not the only sector where you see businesses and entrepreneurs spotting opportunities. I want us to meet the people that are turning trash into treasure, but that are also making you rethink using that plastic bottle.
After a workout on that bike in which I was shredding plastic, it was time to sit down and talk trash with the co-founder of Chaco Zanzibar.
I was just looking at some of your numbers, and it's incredible how many bottles you recycle, glass bottles. Take me through what you're doing at the moment.
Yeah, actually we're recycling glass bottles from tourism industries, and also plastic, water bottles, shampoo bottles. It has to be done something out of that. So Chaco, we came with the idea of trash to treasure.
That's fantastic. And in terms of plastic?
In terms of plastic, right now we're collecting around 5.1 tons a year. But of course there is a lot, to be honest.
There's a lot more plastic than bottles. A lot
more plastic than the bottles. But of course, Chaco, we're looking forward for that, and also to recycling more plastic than even the glass bottles. But also we're planning to grow bigger and bigger. And not only here, this island, but also we think like to go beyond other island destinations, also to give the same kind of concepts what we have at the island.
Have you been trying to export to other African countries?
Yes, we tried a bit, but around Africa it's a little bit difficult to trade because of their rules and regulations. But right now we started on a small scale to Kenya, which is it goes, slowly. But we hope the rest of Africa, they will understand this and they will give us easy access to export around Africa.
As an African, as a Zanzibarian, does it upset you that you can't trade with the rest of the continent?
Yes, very much, because I will really love to do so, and I think it's very important. Also, our example, what the product we're making, what is the treasure what we make or what we create out of the waste, it will be example to those other African countries, because when they see it, and they understand what is the story behind the scene, they will love to do what Chaco does.
Now we head away from the sea and head across the continent. For centuries now, Africa has been a source of commodities that have been traded around the world. In South Africa, a globally sought after commodity has been discovered.
Helium is one of the world's most critical gases, an essential component in everything from space travel and microchip manufacture to life-saving technologies like MRIs and CAT scans. But global supplies have been declining. This, however, is set to change. Two South African investors now sit on one of the richest helium concentrations recorded globally, following the discovery of these astonishingly rich helium wells in South Africa's Free State province.
We paid $1 for the production right. And then from there, after a short amount of time, we discovered helium in the gas, but abnormally high concentrations.
Helium is a very scarce resource and critical to most modern technology. This discovery could have a significant impact for South Africa.
It's more than enough to satisfy all of South Africa's requirements and still have excess. So ironically, out of all of the countries in the world, South Africa is now the one country that is completely helium self-sufficient, which is very, very rare. This is going to be a big boon for South Africa and the continent in the sense that it's such a high value commodity, such an in-demand commodity, and it is going to create outsized export opportunities for the continent.
The first phase of the state-of-the-art plant here in the Free State province of South Africa is just the beginning.
So what makes this space very special is that we have the highest concentration of helium at about 3%, and one of our wells is giving us about 12%. It's also the first onshore plant in South Africa to have natural gas as well as helium.
The head of engineering says the plant is technically highly sophisticated and as safe as it can be.
All our systems are automated, so we don't have a lot of human intervention. So valves open and close by themselves. And then inside the equipment areas, we actually have gas monitors to then pick up if there's any leak on the system.
By 2027, Renogen hopes its project will be fully online and will produce up to 8% of the planet's helium.
It's a project that on many levels is actually giving a lot back to the country, not only from a balance of payments and revenue and dividends, but more importantly, it's also creating a new field of employment and a new skill set in the country. And we hope to be able to pass that down as we expand, we bring on more people and create a significant industry around us in the cryogenic sector, which previously in South Africa was relatively limited.
A fascinating story, but make sure you join me after the break as I catch up with the Chief Operating Officer of Renogen. In the meantime, I'm going to enjoy an orange that has been skillfully peeled. Take a look at that. Hello again. Now, before the break, I told you how helium had been discovered in South Africa. Well, before I flew here to Zanzibar, I had a chat with Nick Mitchell, the Chief Operating Officer of Renogen, and I asked him to take me through the LNG and helium reserves discovered by his company and its significance to the world.
Concentration represents everything, especially when you're talking about helium. Renogen's happened to find a natural gas field that has high concentrations of helium. Typically, elsewhere in the world, you're looking at concentrations lower than 0.5% in these commercial discoveries. And we're sitting with an average concentration of about 3%, with some of our highest producing wells blowing or clocking in excess of 12%.
When I think of helium, we think of birthday parties and balloons that are flying about. But frankly, it has so many industrial uses, specifically also in the medical industry. Take us through the supply-demand scenario right now and how this positions South Africa in a very interesting place.
Your understanding of the market is probably exactly where Steph and I's was when we purchased this field in 2013. It's actually a critical element in most modern day technology that represents a couple of critical industries. Medical, obviously a key one. You then have the science and technology side. Every application today, in terms of a device that you own, either has a semiconductor or a microchip. And you cannot produce those items without the presence of helium. It's used in the fabrication process itself. And that's probably one of the fastest growing industries in modern day society today.
Helium prices have been on the rise. It just shows the scarcity, right? I want you to break the supply-demand scenario right now and where South Africa fits in.
In January of this year, we produced our first liquid helium from this facility, It was produced during the commissioning phase of our process plant, and we anticipate that in the fourth quarter of this year we'll commence with our commercial deliveries to our customers. And at that point, South Africa becomes the 8th country in the world to actually produce and export helium, and that is very significant.
Let's take a look in terms of what this means for the export markets, right? And how you're planning to get helium to the export market, what infrastructure you'll require.
So from an infrastructure perspective, obviously we have to build our own processing facilities. Our phase 1 investment so far is sitting at about $60 million. Our phase 2 investment is anticipated to cost a further $1.2 billion.
So where you are right now around the Free State area, there's a lot of farmland, agriculture is dominant there. I want to talk about the environmental impacts of extracting helium and LNG. Take us through what you've been able to do to minimize the impact, because there's always an impact.
Our approach from an environmental perspective is to simply look at applying best practices, and we look really at the World Bank and the IFC in terms of our guidance. All of our ongoing construction and ongoing operational work, we look to enshrine those performance standards in everything that we do. We're very pleased to be setting the scene for the South African natural gas landscape, because we are the only onshore production right. And that means it comes with a huge amount of responsibility in doing things both responsibly but also sustainably.
Nick, thank you so much. It was such a pleasure speaking to you.
Thank you very much for having me, and we look forward to hosting you anytime, and we'll have your helium balloons ready for you.
Cannot wait. Thank you. And again, we discover an abundance of resources across the African continent. It has been absolutely incredible to visit Zanzibar. And to end the show, I had to climb a 400-year-old baobab tree known as the Tree of Life. Its fruit, known as ubuyu, is a source of income not only for people here in Zanzibar, but for many communities around the African continent. But importantly, this tree can adapt to any environment. It is resilient, it is strong, and it is sturdy, much like the people we've met here in Zanzibar. And as they say in Swahili, kwaheri, goodbye. From me, Eleni Jakas, let's stay connected.